Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Friday feeling surrounds me, even though this show has probably very limited or no chance of going out on a Friday. Who gives a... Doesn't matter. Welcome to the show anyway. Supernatural Strength Channel. And it's the Fat Lad Neil Pickup here in the mother fluffing house. And it's all about the middleweights. And by some miracle, we've managed to get North America's two primaries. The two number one middleweights, as far as opinion and conversation goes at least. And these two men both have got something in common. Both men were dominant in their particular time frame within the World Armwrestling League. Firstly, let me introduce this young man to you. He now makes his name in the heavyweight division of the World Armwrestling League, but he was on a reign of terror for 4 years in the middleweight division of the World Armwrestling League, capturing back-to-back hammers 4 times consecutively. Ladies and gents, it's Toddzilla, Todd Hutchings. There he is. You can recognise him. The eyebrows, nobody else has got a set of them. How's it going, Todd? You alright, buddy?
I'm doing well.
Lovely.
Thank you very much.
The other man sharing the screen with him, which is quite an unusual dynamic at the moment, because I think I'm going to be the smaller one of these, and that's just not good. I probably outweigh them both by about 175 pounds. We'll work with it for today. This man is the current reigning and defending World Armwrestling League hammer holder in the middleweight division. And now I think 2.5 years without a loss. Ladies and gents, welcome Rob Vigeant Jr. How you doing, buddy?
Doing great, buddy. Friday, can't beat it.
Yeah, we were just saying before we went on air, it's for anybody out there who's got pig withdrawal symptoms, if you've tuned into any of Rob's shows previously, no pig. It's terrible.
It's a classic show.
Hey, don't say that, mate. It's too early on. So, guys, thanks for taking the time out. Thanks for coming on. And I wanted to address something with you two guys there's a lot of talk online and on social media about this, and I wanted to sort of hear it from you two guys and see what your own perspectives and opinions were. Eastern Europe has got many, many dominant arm wrestlers in the light to weight groups, particularly the lightweight division and the middleweight division. I think it's fair to say that most people perceive that when you come up to the heavies and the super heavies, that North America is still very much in the hunt for who could be the dominant force in that weight division. However, I don't think the middleweights from North America are given that same or afforded that same perception and respect. You two guys are dominant within the middleweight division and have been dominant over the last sort of, if we couple you two together, the last sort of 6 to 8 years. So, bearing that in mind, where do you sit on that whole argument around Eastern Europe and the comparison with North America? And we'll start with Todd.
Yeah, I mean, we can compete. I've faced this question a bunch of times, and you always ask it correct, or everybody always asks it correctly, but I think I always answer it incorrectly. We are, North American and the middleweights are ultimately competitive with the Eastern Europeans at middleweight, but how I always answer the question is whether we would go over there and just win the thing. You know, I don't say, are we competitive with all the middleweights over there? Usually what I hear is, can we beat Zoloty? Can we beat B.A.F? That's only 3 or 4. They got a big range of mid-level and top-tier folks like we do, right? So anybody ever asked me, how do we do over there? I only answer, what are our odds of actually going over there and winning the whole thing? Not, do we go over there and compete? The whole field isn't Hadzi Zoloft, Hadzi Zoloft stands apart from a whole bunch of people over there, just like, Rob stands apart from the Americans in his class. Like Herman Stevens has been over there a couple of times. I don't know if he made the first year.
The third?
I don't know if he made top 4 or not, but I mean, he was deep into it the first year there that I saw it. I think he did better the next year.
Yeah. I think it was like third, wasn't he? The first time.
I think he took top 4. He was top 4 both hands, I want to say. Left and right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had a good left as well, yeah.
Right. So I mean, that proves that we can go over there and compete, so.
I think you make a good point there, Todd, and also it's fair to say that year, I would actually say was probably tougher than this last time out in terms of the depth, across. So, Rob, let's bring you in at this point, mate. Would you agree with what Todd just said there? Is that your view on it as well, mate?
Yeah, I think he made a great point because people use guys like Rustam and Zoloty as like, that's Europe. But like he said, those guys destroy Europe. So it's not, those guys are the John Brzezinks of Europe. So you can't say like, we can't compete with Europe because you can't compete with Rustam. Well, none of them can either. So, a guy like Pascal Gerard, who took second for like 10 years in a row to Rustam, it still doesn't mean that he's not just as dominant over the rest of the field, except for Rustam. So, I think he said it really well, and that's pretty much was my thoughts of it. When they say, Americans can't compete with Europeans because they have Pushkar, Rustam, Laletin. Yeah, you're naming 3 guys out of like 500 million. Mm-hmm. So what about the other 499, whatever it is, million? Yeah, I think it's very competitive. I think the levels are the same, and they're taking the real, the John Brzezinks of Europe and using that as the standard, and it's not. They're the exceptions.
And let's take a different twist on this, lads. Okay, so talk to the point you've just made there, and we go that tier down. So you've got, how many guys would you put into that absolute elite echelon in the middleweight division? And by middleweight, let's clarify what we mean by middleweight. When I say middleweight, I'm talking around the 200 to 205 pound as a maximum. So we can take a massive Yevgeny Prudnik out of that equation because he's no longer. Talking to both of you on this one. This is just for your purposes of what I'm talking about as a middleweight. So guys who I would class as middleweights within this discussion would be the likes of Sasho, the likes of Haji, because obviously he's still in there. Yeah, you can say B.A.F could probably make that weight class. Rustam B.A.F would be in that conversation. Probably 2 or 3 of the top Bulgarians would get in there as well. Plamen Dimitrov.
Spartak. I know Spartak's having some trouble, but he looked like he was stout.
Yeah, he may be away from
the Turkish kid, he gained a bunch of weight though.
Kosak's, Kosak's out of the equation really now. He's like the 220.
Okay.
But Kosak's even smaller. B.A.F's in the 230s now. For top 8.
So
we'll see if he gets down. It's a different world when you lose 25 pounds.
Quite possibly.
Especially when those guys are all athletes. They're all lean. Guys like that are, Rustam puts on 25 pounds. It's like in his forearm and shoulders. You know what I mean? That guy at 198 is different than the 220 version,
Yeah, he let's be honest, there's not a back tit in sight. None of these guys have got any, they're not carrying any fat. They're definitely standing way behind me in the kebab house queue. That's for damn sure. So, let's look at the tier below that top tier then, guys. So, say you take out of it Rustam B.A.F, you take out of Haji Zoloty, you take out Sasho Andreev, and you look at that next tier down. Do you think the next tier down in North America can compete with them as well? So if you took, who would you say is your next tier down in North America? Storm Chelino?
That's hard to say because really, when I think about the only guys that have consistent wins over Storm are me and Todd. So just because we beat him, we are like the Rustam B.A.F to Storm Chelino. He beats everyone else except for us.
Do you think
him and Coulier are tit for tat? They're back.
I was just going to say there's 3 names that I'd put in with.
Say if we were to make an absolute, hold on a second. If we were to make an absolute next tier down just based on winnings and losses, your next tier, which is still, I would say, world elite with anybody, would be like Coulier, Chad Silver, Storm Chelino. And I think they're all very free, like those guys are right in it.
And there is, of course, the Joker card of Danny Tesh.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but he's not North America.
We didn't make, yeah.
He belongs to the world.
He is. He's definitely child of the world. He
competes on Heaven's team.
Yeah.
He's Jesus's designated batter.
Yeah, you can't. We're not. For anybody out there, for any of the Australians that are offended by that, just remember that Danny Tesh is part man, part cloud, and as such, he's claimed by the globe. Everybody's got that piece. They want that little piece of Tesh, and we'll just leave it there for now. So we'll take Tesh out of the equation, and we'll not throw Jesus in there either. Outside of those, I'm going to say there's 3 guys that I had in that sort of mix, 2A being one of them, Storm Chelino being another, and Jordan Sill being another one.
What about Chad Silvers?
I had him a tier down personally, but Todd Hutchings, you must be able to comment on that one, mate.
Well, Chad Silvers is my Danny Tesh, so I don't think Chad does anything any wrong. And I would love to arm wrestle Jesus, because I bet I could put my finger right through that hole in his hand, and he would never
get a
slip
real
out.
grip. Yeah, you're not letting go there. Yeah, no, you just basically.
Good thing we didn't have this conversation on Easter.
And think how much fun you'd be at the after party, man. You would never run out of wine.
It's a very good point, well put, to be honest. But Danny Test can do that as well. So, do you think that the argument really is around depth, number of competitors at a level?
Yeah. Well, what I think also happens is when they say we can't compete with they confuse those of us from North America that go compete in the World Championships versus those of us who go over and pull at Zloty. Because I've never been to a World Championship. John's been once. You know, a lot of our best guys don't go compete in the Worlds, right? The ones that you go have to qualify and buy the uniform for. Whereas, you know, a lot of our more competitive North Americans go over and pull at Zloty and not the World. So I don't think North America does real well at the World Championships, but we seem to do better when they go compete at Zloty.
Why do you think there's such a difference attitudinally, mate?
Because I think going to Worlds costs you like $3,000 and you don't win nothing. That's why I've never been. I've never considered it for a second.
Well, it's funny you should say that because you made a similar point on the show the other week, Rob. You know, you don't feel like you're not too worried about medals. You're more around the, and yet that's funny, isn't it? Because I know that you're the guy that's always looking for that. I want to prove it. You know, I want that next step.
I did have, in recent years, I did have a little bit of a boner to go to Worlds just because I wanted to say that I was a W.A.F champ. I wanted that to say. But now when W.A.F went sideways, it's impossible to ever get that because now it'll be, well, W.A.F's not W.A.F anymore because these countries are gone and it was better 2 years ago. So there'll always be like an asterisk of where W.A.F isn't even W.A.F anymore. So, and it's a week-long commitment, thousands of dollars, and I've seen more guys like Corey Miller that have gone and never even got pinned. You get fouled out of the building twice just for even, sniffling. So that'd be terrible to go through that kind of commitment. And I mean, at one point in time I did, but now I'm kind of like, not anymore.
Well, it's funny that though, isn't it? Because when I look at these kind of things, I always break it down personally by who's represented because we all know who the guy is, who the guys are. We know, you know. So if you look at World Armwrestling Federation now around the middleweight brackets, anywhere around that middleweight grouping, surely the argument's got to still be there. The best lads in the world are still competing there. You know, there's that's not the case with the ladies because you've taken Sweden out of the equation. We're a very, very solid force. But so that waters it down immensely. But in the World Armwrestling Federation middleweight divisions, middleweight groupings, if you look at the countries that are still competing there, you've got Russia, Ukraine, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Armenia, Uzbekistan, Turkey, my God, how did I forget Turkey? So it is very, very, Bulgaria. It's very, very hard to make any kind of logical argument to say that isn't representative of the absolute heavy hitters in the middleweight division for me. So
I'm with you. It's just it just lost some of its allure. Like I do think that Zloty carries more clout.
Yeah, I suppose there's something in that. I'm not sure it will do going forward.
I think you could win a W.A.F medal and get half the praise as if you came in top 3 in Zloty by getting one good win or one good round. Zloty makes superstars.
Even now.
Oh, yeah. And I think this
I
past year,
disagree.
because of all the IFA and all that weird stuff going on, this past year Zloty was the weakest we've seen since, like, I've started in the sport. Because there's, with the top 8 locking up good athletes and people being separated with different leagues and not being able to compete, it's still Zloty births stars globally. Yeah. If you do good at Zloty, you're a global sensation.
Yeah, I wonder though whether that will continue now with the World Armwrestling Federation stroke IFA issue. I wonder whether that's going to water it down a little bit. Because when you don't have those top guys, those heavy hitters that I mentioned from the countries that I mentioned, nobody can claim that it's anywhere near the level of tournament that it's been in the past.
Right. But to Rob's point, if you go over and you pull Zloty or any of Igor's events, Igor's actively promoting his stuff all year long worldwide.
Yeah.
So you win Zloty, Igor's promoting you. Where you go win the W.A.F. Worlds, they kind of forget about you until the next year. You got to report. There's nobody constantly promoting the winner. You got to promote yourself if you win a W.A.F. medal. You win a trophy and cash money from Igor. He promotes you. He puts you on videos. He has you doing, he gets you interviewed by people speaking English as a second language and stuff. So, and evidently that scrawny redheaded girl must win Zloty every year because she's on every one of Igor's videos.
No comment. All I would say is that I 100% agree with what you just said in some respects, in that there are some absolute killers that are World Arm Wrestling Federation champions that aren't promoted, aren't featured. I banged the drum about one of them on here, a guy called Zaranov. And Zaranov is, I don't know how good, but I'll tell you this, Zaranov would mix it up with a lot of very, very highly thought of super heavyweights in the world right now, in my opinion. Watching him at the World Arm Wrestling Federation event and how he went through everybody in the 110s made me think, Jesus, how strong is that kid? He must be ridiculous. And the manner in which he did it, when you see somebody and they just nonchalantly just scythe through people like it's a joke, that was the kind of dominant performance he was putting on. It was frightening. And the last time that you saw somebody do that, it's not long before they suddenly emerge. In fact, I'm going to say the last appearances of Levan Saganashvili in the W.A.F. Worlds weren't as dominant as Zaranov's win. I'm not by any, don't get me wrong here, don't get it twisted. I'm not saying that Zaranov can go over and beat Levan. Different playing field, different criteria. But what I am saying is that guy, I wouldn't be surprised at all if you see him in one of the major elite tournaments very soon, because the guy is a beast. And look at Cossack in Turkey. How strong is he? At 100 kilos. Can anybody beat that kid at that weight? Hard to say, innit?
These are all questions. Nobody can be beat until they get beat. This is why these bigger matches should happen, because everyone seems invincible when they're just a little bit above the field, but sometimes they meet somebody that's got a little bit of that something that makes the invincible seem invincible.
So talk to me about catch weights, lads. Obviously, right now, if you look at the top 8, the weight class is slightly higher. There's been sort of jungle drums in the background that you could see an additional class in the World Arm Wrestling League if things started branching out and there was more events tapped in on a yearly basis. You could see that reintroduction of the sort of 220 class, 225 pound class. Is that something that would interest? Certainly, Todd, you've got to be answering yes, because if it's a 225 pound class, I mean it's right in your wheelhouse, then, isn't it?
Well, if they create a 225 pound class and Devin goes into it, I automatically move up into one of the top 3 in the super heavyweights, because now it's just me and Jerry. So I would love them to create a new class and take Devin out of it.
Mm-hmm. What about yourself, mate? Have you thought about that, Rob?
Yeah, we'll see how many people, but I mean, a different weight, you could mix up the weights where you do something a little lower, because right now the lightweight is low, like 165. They could do something like a 185 or 190, and then like a 215, 220, just to get different mixing of different athletes. But yeah, I mean, I think it's great if they put it together. Yeah.
Where is your walk around weight, Rob?
I'm 205, 210.
Yeah, so you'd never get bigger than that, really.
I mean, I did during one of my wife's pregnancies, but it wasn't because I was super thick in the back and jacked in the shoulders and stuff. I was, pregnancy weight. I was eating what I wanted. I wouldn't say I got fat, but I was, up almost around 220. But, 210, if I'm real thick, a little bit over that, but that's a good range for me. If you had, give me a lot of freedom to be very comfortable, I would say.
Imagine if you had the legs of a normal human. You'd be like 260 now. The upper body's massive.
But then I wouldn't take all them sexy pictures I do and be a hit on the dance floor.
There is that,
my
mate.
stock would go way down.
There is that, without a shadow of a doubt. But if we look at things going forward, right? We had myself and Todd had a chat in the last episode of sort of his profile, and he was speaking there about the fact that he was approached by World Armwrestling League to move up in weight class because of the fact that he'd dominated the division at middleweight. It's fair to say that you may be in a similar sort of situation now. Are you conscious of that, Rob? Are you sort of looking for challenges above and beyond the weight class, or is it just specific athletes that interest you?
No, see, where the problem lies is once you start giving people prize money for winning, it is nice to go away and have an easier field or a field you got a higher chance of winning. When you start talking about it's a pretty good payday. With that being said, I always got into this sport wanting to see where I stood, and if I find myself getting stagnant in a class, I've always wanted to move up to not be the best 200-pound armwrestler. It's something that Todd said in the past, and I agree with it. You're better off being the number 5 super heavyweight than you are the number 1 middleweight. And I would like to see where I stand next. I think universally, we are seen is tiered down from heavyweights. Even if your best middleweight could be a top 3 super heavyweight, until you do it, you're just seen as the sideshow to the heavyweights. I would just like to see where I stand on a global, with everyone involved basis. And I think everyone's end result should be to be the best. But if you can't be, then you go to a weight restriction. Me, I would like to move up. Yeah.
That is interesting. So let me throw a few names your way. Obviously, we've seen Todd match up with the following guys. Okay, Ron Bath, number 1. Marcio Barboza, number 2. Matt Mask, number 3. How do you see yourself with those guys? Do you put yourself right in that mix as well? Stylistically, as well as, because strength is strength. But if you were bigger, obviously there's going to be some strength come with that.
Yeah, I'd have a lot of room to grow, which is to take the brakes off. But also, I think I match up well with Ron. We got similar builds, and I've only pulled him once, and that was back in I think 2009, Rule of the Nation. I did well. It was like a follow-out type thing. I felt really good. Marcio, we had our match in Vegas, and I explained in depth what happened there. I'd like to pull him with him being healthy and myself being healthy, but I at least prove that I'm in the conversation. And Matt, I've said before, my hand is good enough for him, and I think I'm flat out stronger.
Let me throw another one your way, mate. A match that I quite like. What about you and Mike Aiello?
I mean, I've only pulled him in practice and in maybe 5 or 6, 7 years ago when I was really hurt, and we went 1-2 that day. But I believe that it's easy to figure out where he's going, and I think that even where he's going, I'm stronger than him right now. When you can cut off someone's lane, when you can take somebody and beat them in their strongest spot, what's their option? I mean, again, that's just my speculation of it. But would I be okay with pulling him? Yeah.
And the other point that I wanted to sort of raise was, we can't do this show without asking you. I know that you've always been keen to face Todd again. And a lot of people have said, oh, well, that'll not happen because Todd doesn't want to really come down to middleweight for reasons that we've already spoken about at length. Just the whole weight cutting thing is an annoyance, is an encumbrance, and it's bloody difficult, to be perfectly honest. And without sort of trying to, say anything disrespectful about Todd at all, at 53 years old, there can be, as he rightly said, risk to potentially doing 15, 20 pound bloody weight cuts. It's not necessarily the best thing in the world. But is there a desire to pull Todd again from your perspective, Rob? And also, we'll start with you and then the same way back. Is there, and I don't mean this I'm not trying to sort of create that, let's ignite this situation here, because I know that you guys have had some inflammatory moments, but you also, from speaking to you individually, I know that there's a massive amount of respect that goes back and forth when you're alone talking one-on-one about each other. Is it more of a I just got to know thing? That's really where I'm going at, I mean, I always had that within me. I wanted to know.
Yeah, I of course, for the nature of the sport, unfortunately, is, like I look at when I got into sport and I followed when Todd was training down with Chad, I always wondered who was where, because they kind of would get in events and avoid each other. They would kind of both go into different classes and sweep up, or they would kind of like lay down on each other and sweep up the class. So you never really knew who was where, because friends don't like to, usually when they make a friendship, they don't like to pull each other because you don't want to deal out a loss to your buddy. But such is the nature of the sport, you get in to see where you stand. And like I said, the weird animosities, a lot of that is, trying to find your way and being a kid. I got into sport when I was in my 20s, and I did and said a lot of stupid stuff, and now I sit here, I'm not that person anymore, but the curiosity with Todd is going down, if he retired today, as one of the greats of the sport. No doubt about it. So the curiosity to pull someone like him, I equate it to pulling someone like Ron Bath or Marcio with the name and the accolades. So not from I need to redeem myself. I feel I've done some redeeming on my own terms. Just as pulling another one of the greats of the sport, just like pulling Rustum. Yeah, I would like to just for just a higher level match, not for any righting any wrongs or past things. Like it's our history's written and dead and gone. But to pull him, I just look at pulling one of the other greats like John Brzezinski. It would be a great challenge.
And going to Todd, what would your answer be to the guys out there that would say and have said online that, it wouldn't mean anything if it happened at a catch weight at a higher level because it's not middleweight? So do you think does that, in the cold light of day, is that something that you're concerned about? Does it make any difference to you, or would you think you guys would match up just the same whether you pulled at 205 limit, 200 pound limit, or at 210, 215 limit? Is there a difference?
Well, I think every time we pulled, I think I was 215. He was probably still 205, but I probably was 215 even though I made the cut. I don't think the cut made me weaker. I mean, it sucked going through it, but I wouldn't have cut all that weight if I thought I was giving up power. So, and I think he's going to end up in the super heavyweight class anyways, because you've only got Paul Lynn to feed him to, and then went through the whole class. So they're not going to, I'm saying? That's going to be boring. It's going to be as boring as watching Michael Todd pull Devin and Jerry every single year. So Rob doesn't really have a chance. I don't think he's got much of a choice in it anymore. And his size, even though he's 205, his arms and shoulders are as big as Devin's. They're bigger than mine. I mean, it's not at 205 pounds, but he's got it all in the right place,
Oh, yeah.
Even Devin's ass ain't pulling sideways, it's our shoulders. So he's 205, and that'll look great on the scoreboard when he walks out. And it's 205 pound Rob and 380 pound Ryan Espy or something. But when you look at their arms, shoulders, and their upper body, they're the same freaking size.
From what you just said there, Todd, so obviously you're saying you didn't feel like you necessarily sacrificed strength after you made the cut. Do you therefore believe that an informed Rob, and Rob's saying that he believes that he's probably at an all-time high right now in terms of his level. He's going to new, uncharted territory was the wording I think he used. Do you think he could emulate what you've done and slot straight into that super heavyweight bracket and make some noise in there?
He probably has a better chance than I do because he's more versatile than I am. Right? Like I said, his upper body's the same size as mine, and he's got more directions to go. So he'll probably go up there and do better than I did. He's probably got more options against Devin than I do. Right? So where I would prefer pulling Jerry rather than Devin, I think I'd almost like Rob versus Devin better than Rob versus Jerry. So we would, I think we start out equal in it, but I think we would each have different paths to the top. I don't think either one of us are going to do shit with Michael Todd, but that's not the point at this point right now. Until that prize money is more like $40,000, I'm fine mucking around in the lower level. But you make $40,000 prize money, and I will make a 185-pound weight class if you create it. Right?
Yeah.
Because then I got a shot at winning both hands, but there ain't no way I'm going to win a super heavyweight left-handed match. I'm not even going to win a 225-pound left-handed match. Mm-hmm. So that's why that weight cut was attractive to me, because it was the only way I could be competitive right and left-handed.
I mean, the other thing we didn't discuss was if there was anybody that we felt could come the other way. And the only guy that I really feel that could effectively come the other way, potentially, would be Hermes Gasparini.
Yeah, he's awfully small for a super heavyweight. And Krasi's awfully small for a super heavyweight, in my opinion.
But the interesting thing with Krasimir is he's taken sort of a similar aspect to the one you did, Todd, in that, when I asked him outright, well, where do you want to pull? And he was sort of like, I want to pull big. I want to be...
Oh, yeah, because that's where all the famous people are.
He said, I have literally no interest in pulling smaller guys. I only want to pull the biggest, strongest mother fluffer that I can possibly pull. What I'm interested in. Nothing else. It sounded like Yoshi Kanai with a different accent.
Of the middleweight. The sad song of the middleweight is you can be a freakazoid, bad person, and you're still a sideshow to the guy who's 300 pounds that might not be able to shine your shoes, but you're a sideshow to the heavyweights. And this has been my gripe for a long time. You see incredible athletes. I always said a lot of middleweights are just heavyweights with abs, but we're sideshows. And I've been a little butthurt with the World Armwrestling League about kind of how we're sideshows about it, because I don't need fame and recognition, but when you feel like you're stepped on a lot and your time is wasted a lot because you got on a scale and you were 50 pounds lighter than that guy, I don't know. But I could see why people, if they want a little validation in the sport, I could see why they pull heavy. I've done it. Before I'd hurt my shoulder, I used to pull heavies all the time.
See, I don't know whether it's a bias thing, but I disagree with that comment. I think that the wider perception outside of arm wrestling, outside of the purist, is around that super heavyweight thing being the be-all and end-all. But I get really excited about some middleweight matchups, just as excited as I would, And I think in any sport, if you've got the right characters and the right match, then that opportunity presents itself. The same in combat sports. If you've got, Conor McGregor's fighting Khabib, I'm no more excited by any match than I am about that. For me, that's mega. I want to watch that fight.
I don't know. Rocky Balboa only weighs like 205 pounds, and he competes in super heavyweight boxing.
Yeah, that's it. He was only 202 pounds when he fought Thunderlips.
Right. So, that's the money. People only want to see the big guys, no matter what size you are. And it's cooler if you beat the big guys and they're bigger than you.
That's the...
Yeah, the perception is if a guy like Mike Aiello walks in a building, the perception is like, oh, just give him the money. He's big, he's got muscles.
Usually from the women on the front row who've got it in the teeth and are asking him to take it out.
Like you're gonna get hurt if you go against a guy that big. He outweighs you. Everybody in every sport, the heavyweight champ is the title. That's the title. The rest is just has an asterisk next to it.
It's sad reality. I was depressed when I came up this goal.
You're the exception. My own mother was worried about me pulling Chuck Ryder. She was calling me up having a fucking panic attack thinking I was going to get my shit hurt.
Yeah, look at you coming out of what happened there? What happened to lockdown, son? Hey? Goddamn rebel. Hey, mask on.
I can only be harassed so much before I got to oblige someone.
Oh, mate, Chuck, I felt for Chuck, actually. Because after round 1, it was just like, oh, dear. We've all been in that situation. Who hasn't been there? You know, when you just think, oh, dear.
This guy, you got to think about the mentality of someone who will threaten the whole state of New Hampshire online, tell them that he's going to come and kill everybody, basically. And then he actually shows up into a lion's den when there's like 40 people came to watch.
You got to take your hat off to him there, mate. He showed up.
But I'm saying that's a person who's probably not really worried about too much. They're probably not all there. Like, you're like, fuck it. New Hampshire people are like carrying. They got like machetes on their heads. Yeah. This guy just rolls in hot, sniffing smell salts, and starts like making a mess of the dude's garage that we had it at, like banging shit and going crazy. And I'm like, this guy is a loony bird. I'll be honest. I didn't know where that was going to go as that match progressed. I didn't know how that was going to turn out. He bit his tongue. He was bleeding out the mouth. It was all kinds of fucked up.
Really? This is inside information you only get on this show, ladies and gentlemen.
What you didn't see on that thing was, I looked at
exclusive,
his head and neck was like, who's the guy? Megatron from Transformers. His neck was...
You can tell what he is at home, can't you? Spot the guy with like 12 kids, Rob, there up in summer camp. He's just been watching Transformers while having a beer. I love it, mate. You carry on. Don't let anybody pull you out.
Yeah, that's, I don't know where I was going with Chuck Ryder, but yeah, my mom called me up and was like, this guy, he seems crazy. He's big, and what's he weigh? I'm like, but that's, you know, my mom's seen me do this for 16 years, and she's called me up worried because that guy is a super heavyweight.
Are you worried about pulling supers from a sort of damage perspective? Is that a thing?
I think if I show up, if I do the right things, if I show up table conditioned and trained, the reason I got hurt with Marcio is I took that match off the couch. So my body was like, what are you doing? I think if I show up conditioned and trained, there's winning and losing, but you minimize the risk of injury. I'm not worried about damage. I just get, you know, it's a confidence thing with getting back into a mix with those guys. You know, you always look at them, even now, I look at those guys like, you know, but it's just getting in there. I'm not worried about getting injured. I mean, I got a job that's, I could probably get injured or killed every day. So, you know, get me out of that. Pay me more money to go supers and I won't work anymore.
Well, I know Todd's not worried about it because I've had a few conversations with him and I said, look, if we're putting it together, where do you want to go? Where do you leave? And he always names me the biggest dude on the roster. Said earlier on, I wouldn't mind another crack at Jerry.
Yeah. And I always get to go last in the meet, too. If you're in the super heavyweight, you're always the last match. They always start off with the girls and the little guys.
Yeah, at least you get to be the main event. When you're the heavyweight, you're always the main event.
Yeah.
That's just, I don't know, I've been the main event like 3 times.
Yeah.
You know?
It's all advantages this. No making weight. That's a win for a start. You can you can watch every, it's good times. You need to get your ass up, Rob.
And the stand-out pictures are hilarious because they're so much taller than you are.
And like you said, there's the glory that, because he's got such a career as a middleweight, that 5 years from now, if he's got a run of dominance in the heavyweights, they're going to be like, he could be 270. They'll be like, oh, middleweight guy dominates the heavyweights. You're always known as the middleweight.
Ladies and gentlemen, wherever we see these two lads end up next season, it's going to be interesting. I think Rob, you've already showed that you're hungry to get out there. And as sort of a closer before we get out of this show, you know, how much are you still excited by anybody in that middleweight division right now, or are you looking at your next match? Are you screaming out to pull somebody different, somebody harder, somebody bigger?
You know, to say something like that, it's you got to be careful how you word it, because I wouldn't want to offend somebody that's out there that's a great athlete like Paul Lynn, who I've yet to pull. So I don't want to be like I'm looking past him. But to say that if I was focusing on Paul Lynn, I'd be the same as if I was going to pull Ryan Espy, I think you'd get a different person in both matches.
Interesting.
I think I need a further focal point, just the way my brain works. And I've been sitting stagnant for almost a year now. And I'm at a crossroads where I'm either going to get really, really good or fall off the wagon and just go do my camp life and become a bonehead again.
Yeah, so it's almost not having that challenge to rise up to is a little bit demotivational in some respects.
I'd rather have somebody to go against the census is you've got like a 5% chance of winning this, and I got an opportunity to shock the world, than go into a match that's like, oh, you should steamroll this guy. You know, that's not exciting.
Mm-hmm. But it's interesting that neither of you guys are too excited or concerned about pulling one another. So much chat goes on outside of online and on social media, and yet when you get you two guys on here, it's not something that's on either of your radar particularly.
I mean, if we talked about guys that we lost to, there's lots of guys that I lost to in the beginning that I never got to redeem. Ray Darling used to show up at my tournaments and laugh how he got a win on me when I first started, and he would never pull me again, so I could never redeem that. And until the day he died, he used to laugh when he saw me. He's like, remember when I beat you? And he never gave it back to me. And guys like James Smith, I told you, I never got to pull him again since 2005 or 6. Mike Onderbeck, there's guys that got wins here and there that I never redeemed. So for me to just chase one solo guy would be a nod to his accolades, that he's still active and he's still at the top. Pulling him would, like I said, would be like pulling Ron Bath. So he's just lumped in that category. Am I hungry for it? I'm hungry for someone that brings the better version of me out. And without disrespecting Storm's level, Paul Lynn's level, Craig Toulier's level, it's not a disrespect. And they might very well be way up here. But for me to get excited, I need that something that I feel like I got to reach for.
It's about your perception.
Yeah, my perception. I need something that almost seems like I got to prepare myself to climb a mountain that I might not make it to the top of. Not something I've already summited, not something that seems, just my own perception.
So you feel like a match with Todd would bring that out of you? It would bring that sort of maximum?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, because of his history, he's the guy that's always put, next to my name when I win something or do something. He's the one that I'm always, whether it's online or there's always like that ghost. He's the ghost that I chase. So yeah, he would definitely, if I said there wasn't a portion of my training or a portion of a day that arm wrestling enters my mind and Todd Hutchings isn't in that thought process, I'd be lying.
I just make things better wherever I go.
Ray of sunshine.
That's my job here, is to make all these nasty
get
that.
Better. That wall of shame, get it rectified. Lads, I want to say thanks very much for giving up your time to come on the show. Really, really appreciate that insight, and I'm sure our viewers will. Ladies and gents, if you do like what we do here on the Supernatural Strength channel, make sure you tell everybody about it. Please like, share, subscribe, give it a shout out, and until that time, we will see you again very, very soon. Hopefully with these two guys coming back on. Maybe have them on in the presence very soon as well. And we hope you and your family stay safe. Take it easy, guys.
Bye, guys.